All right, welcome back, guys, and let's create some marble stone effect materials, right? So as you can see here in this beautiful preview, you are seeing a marble slash stone effect, right? It's more like a stone here. So I'm gonna open my material editor.
I'm gonna open my material editor and we're gonna find three materials here.
All right, so what I want you to show, guys, is basically, let me just put this on the side and open the history, right? So in the history, you can see here 21 minute 46, doesn't matter, 21 minute 6 minutes 17 minutes, right? So the first one was very fast SSS2. All right, so as you can see here, it has a bunch of settings that you can control. You have overall color, which is going to be your main texture, diffuse color, you have your diffuse amount, you have a bunch of settings: subsurface color, scatters radius in centimeters, and phase function, and specular options that you can choose. For example, none, simple, ray traced, solid, and refractive. So basically all of these are gonna give you a bit different results, and obviously different results in rendering time as well. So I did use for this one scattered GI. It just gives us a better, more realistic result. So it looks like, I don't know, I made some tests. But honestly, this is the approach that I used for very fast SSS in creating this marble stone effect. Now, the other material that I create was stone, ignore the name. Basically, it was a simple V-Ray material with no translucency, as you can see here, right? And everything else is pretty much simple, almost like a plastic material, right? But obviously it's not plastic, right? And as you can see, the first result took, which is fast SSS2, it took, on my settings that I'm using right now, I didn't change the settings for all of these three images, right? So the fast SSS took 21 minutes. So double click on that. That's the fast SSS 2. Obviously, I didn't play around with for too long with these settings, but this is the stone effect that I got, and I kind of like it, right? It looks quite neat. It has some depth into it, right? Now the other one was the V-Ray material with nothing, right? Just a simple V-Ray reflective material, right? And that's the result. Bam, right? Now, can you see a massive difference? No, right? You can see a bit of in the lightness, but obviously to play around with these fast SSS settings, you will take a good amount of time playing around with it, trying to match something, amazing there, right? And if you're in a rush, if you're on a deadline, yeah, you will not try to, waste your time on this one material, right? Obviously, if you will create your own library and store that library somewhere on the project manager, for example, that's a plugin for 3ds Max, or connector, that's another plugin. Or you can use just, you can use a V-Ray, you can use a new material library, and you can create your library, but that library is only going to work for that project. If you're creating a new project, you're going to have to, open that material library, find it and open it. So it's going to import into your scene, right? So obviously this took a while to render. I was using ray trace solid, so it's rendering it a bit longer. Simple, it's a bit shorter time, but then again, it still takes time. So this is fast SSS, 21 minutes. That's the look of it, right? A really quick setup. Obviously I didn't play around for too long, right? And this is what I get. This one took me honestly 5 seconds to set up, really easy, and that's the result. Bam, right? So it's a bit lighter. Obviously I would need to, as you can see, this material has a lower IOR number, right? So I forgot to play around with this. That's the IOR, right? And that's the IOR for this one, it's 2. For this one is 1.3, right? Which is kind of a bit wrong for a stone material. For a stone material, it should be a bit higher, obviously. It should be from 1.6 to maybe 3 or something like that, right? Usually I use 2, usually I use 2 or 1.8 or 2.5. It really depends what you're trying to get, right? It's all about setting, it's all about test rendering and make it sure that the material looks correct, right? And even for some shot or for some camera angles, for example, if you're creating a kitchen and you have a white tile floor and you have a white kitchen, you know, it's gonna be really hard to see that reflection on the floor, because obviously the white color is gonna reflect white, right? And so the reflection is gonna be quite hard to get. So you will need to crank that IOR up in some situations a bit more, right? Just to bring that reflection up, and especially if the client is requesting that. So the third material that I created was V-Ray material, obviously, and I was using hard wax model, right? So it works quite well with hard surfaces like marble, wax, or whatever, right? Obviously you can use hybrid, but I was experimenting with hard wax, and it did give me a really nice result, I'm not gonna lie. So that's fast SSS 2, that's simple V-Ray material, and that's the V-Ray material with translucency on, right? And obviously I played around with settings. So obviously to activate the translucency, you have to put the refraction on, so either in half or either in full. Please experiment with this, but for translucency to work, you have to have refraction. If refraction is gonna be black, your translucency, this effect right here, which you're gonna see here, even the fog color will not take any effect. Literally this setting here, fog color, fog multiplier, fog bias, translucency, the whole tab will be dead. Basically, it's not gonna work, right? So you have to apply refraction. So with the refraction, you can kind of control, you know, the strength of these effects here. And then you play around with the fog color, with fog multiplier, with fog bias. You can play around with these settings, but I usually don't really touch these settings here because by default they look quite nice, and obviously you don't want to spend too much time. Thickness, it does work in different lighting situations, right? For example, in this studio lighting situation, this 10 centimeters thickness, it doesn't look like it's, you know, taking that into consideration, unless maybe I would point a light from over the rear, or I would kill some lights. Maybe I will see that a bit in a stronger effect, right? So for example, talking about wax materials, right? And obviously you can play around with the backside color and the light multiplier. So light multiplier, basically it will make the material look more lighter. If I'm gonna switch that up, there you go. So as you can see how it looks smooth and kind of, you know, stone looking like. So to get that same effect from fast SSS, I would have to play a lot longer, right? Unless obviously you will find a, you know, there's not going to be a perfect solution for the settings. Every time with every different material, it's going to be different, right? So for example, that's the fast SSS. That's the simple V-Ray material, and that's the V-Ray material with translucency on. Obviously it does look quite smooth and translucent, right? Even in this lighting situation, but obviously I can change that by controlling the settings here. Obviously the light multiplier, the fog multiplier, the bias, right? Even the color here. So I did plug this color over the translucency, obviously with the lighter color correction approach, and it did give me this result, which I quite liked, right? It does look really stony and marbly, right? With these things, for example, the fast SSS, it does look nice. Even this one looks nice. I don't see any, obviously, you know, massive differences, but obviously you can see the fast SSS gives us some depth into the material, right? This one looks a bit flat, but honestly, if you would see it from the first time, you will definitely say, you know, it's stone or whatever. For this material, it does look that it does translucent a lot of obviously light inside of it, right? And it does give us this kind of nice look. All right, so but obviously it's up to you to decide. So as you can see here, the fast SSS took 21 minutes on the settings that I'm using on 1.5K resolution, right? The V-Ray material, the simple one, took 6 minutes, right? So that's quite a big difference if you ask me. And if you change from that to that, you know, I saved what, almost 14 minutes or so. But anyways, 15 minutes or so. And with the V-Ray translucency, obviously took 17 minutes. Same, so it's quite a long time to render. Obviously, we will change the settings a bit because I was rendering with a lower noise threshold. So I'm gonna change this to 3 at the moment. Maybe I'm gonna keep that to 16 for now. So please do watch my first video on this playlist. Is gonna be called V-Ray Materials Introduction. I'm gonna be introducing you guys with the scene, with the setup, with the rendering settings here, and all of that kind of stuff. So I don't want to repeat myself every time with max settings, with V-Ray settings, and obviously the whole lighting approach in general. So please do watch that video. I will be showing everything there, and I will be talking about the master file for all of these V-Ray materials. Where can you get them, right? All right, so let's create some simple materials, right? So let's first create maybe, I don't know, 5 or 8 different marble materials or stone materials or granite materials, right? So for example, you can create kitchen countertops, etc., right? So at the moment, I am gonna create something really simple, right? So obviously the same drill like I showed you. So I have a couple of textures there, and let's just say, let's pick one of them, right? So let's just say I'm gonna pick this one, right? So I think this is seamless. I cannot remember now. I assume so. So for example, I'm gonna apply this material here. I'm gonna use maybe some area 0.8 for now. And I will use a color correction because I want to make it a bit darker, right? So for example, this is gonna be a tile in the bathroom or something along those lines, right? So I'm gonna make this at 70 or so, and I'm gonna drop it in the diffuse, right? So the next thing I want to do is apply some reflection. So for the reflection, I'm gonna use 80, all right? And I'm gonna use an IOR of, for example, 2, right? So this is what I'm getting already. I'm getting a reflective material. Obviously, I'm using a higher IOR, but I'm using a lower reflection, right? So I don't want to make that reflection pop too much. We will be adjusting that later on. So then I'm gonna have to put a glossiness of 0.92 just to apply a bit more matte looking effect, right? So a bit more matte looking than really glossy, right? Like really reflective. So the next thing we can try to do is obviously test render this, right? And see how it looks. So I'm gonna apply on my dummy object. There we go. So this is the material, and as you can see, we only have one seam there, which is obviously the unwrapping. So this ball is unwrapped. Everything is unwrapped here, but we want to try to make this, I think, a bit smaller because it is looking a bit too big, right? So we want to make it look quite nice. There we go. So ignore that seam there. Obviously, this is the unwrapping, but everything else should look okay-ish, right? So usually in most cases with stone materials and marble materials especially, you're not gonna apply any bump map, right? Because it's just you're not gonna see it that well, and it's just a small, it's such a small detail, sometimes you cannot even notice it, especially if you're rendering this from far away. But if you do create a stone like material which is really rough and unreflective or something like that, you want to try to obviously add some bump map. But like I said, it really depends what kind of material are you creating, and it really depends what kind of reference are you holding in front of you. Do you have a real life sample, a physical sample? Or because sometimes when you work in a company, sometimes other companies send you physical samples. Literally, you can touch them, you can see them, and you can try to replicate them, right? And obviously those samples have a name on the back of them, on the back of the samples, so you can search them online, find a digital texture, maybe, you know, try to replicate something. So that's how it usually works, right? Or the client can just send you a name. You can just search it on Google, find it, and, you know, try to recreate it or something like that, right? All right, so I'm gonna be rendering in regions just because my machine is quite a potato. It has a potato CPU basically. Where is it? Performance, there you go. So it has 10 cores, 20 threads, i7, 3K speed, so it's decent. I have plenty of RAM, 128 gigs, GPU NVIDIA Titan X Pascal. So everything here is decent except for the CPU. The CPU is quite weak, obviously. So, but yeah, so I'm gonna be rendering in regions, right? So I'm gonna apply a IPR mode, and I'm gonna drag a region there. So you can instantly see how fast it is rendering. Obviously, we are getting some noise because I did decrease the noise threshold, right? But don't you know, be afraid of the noise, especially when you are test rendering it, because obviously that noise is not gonna affect, you know, this material that much. You're just trying to get that good looking material, right? So I'm gonna increase this maybe just by a bit, right? So maybe 2.2, right? 16, there you go. That should be fine. That should be better. So there you go. So basically this is how you would start rendering your stone materials, right? So with the higher IOR and less reflection, right? Because look what's gonna happen when I'm gonna increase the reflection, right? So it's gonna just look crazy, right? Bam. So there you go. So never try to, you know, create a marble material with, you know, something like that, because all the reflections are gonna be quite overexposed and they're not gonna look really realistic, right? This object, it almost starts to look like a metal-y material, right? So you want to crank that reflection down to 100, 140s or something like that, right? So the reflection is going to be there and nice, but it's not going to be overexposed by your lights or something like that, right? And obviously in post-production, when you are increasing the contrast and applying some LUTs, blah blah blah, you know, your dark colors are becoming more darker and contrasty, and your lighter colors, your highlights, are gonna become more lighter, right? So you gonna try to obviously find a balance right in between your lighting in your scene and your materials, right? That's really important. And then obviously you can crank the hell out of everything in Photoshop. So the more dynamic range you will create in your image, the better it's going to be in your post-production. So you don't want to overexpose areas and you don't want to underexpose areas. This is applying on your lighting system, and that is going to apply on your materials. So you have to find a balance. All right, so there you go. This is our first stone look like material, right? Obviously you're using a diffuse and you're using a bit of the glossiness reflection, which is 0.92. You're using a low reflection level and you're using a higher IOR. So for the IOR you can go from 2 to 4 and etc. But the more you go up with this number, with this IOR, with this fall off reflection, fall off effect, you are gonna try to decrease the reflection because the effect can get, you know, too strong, right? So you want to control those reflections as much as possible. You don't want to make this material look really metally, right? So I'm gonna cancel that render here, and we're gonna call this stone version 1, doesn't matter, right? So now we're gonna create something different. So let's just try, for example, a different material, and we're gonna try to maybe put some, let me just go to my Explorer here, and let's just say what we have here, right? So this is gonna be some kind of like a stone effect, right? And it doesn't look that this material is reflective. This material should be something like a matte looking, I don't know, kitchen countertop or some worktop or something like that, right? So let's just say we're gonna import this material, right? And we're gonna put this as 05, for example. And obviously I do remember that I did made this color from another texture, so the hue is it is different here. So I'm gonna put that to some area 05 just to make it a bit sharper, and I will try to desaturate this a bit, right? There we go. And I'm gonna put this into diffuse, really simple. Okay. And now what I can do is try to experiment with this material, and I'm gonna try to extract as much things as possible from this material, right? So I'm gonna desaturate this material because I like to do that obviously when I'm applying some bump maps. So on this stone material, I would love to have a bump map, which is gonna be really subtle, right? So I'm gonna go to bump, and I'm gonna apply this to maybe 4 or so. Right, and we'll check it out. If it's not gonna work, you know, we can disable this. But color correction now, and what I want to do is disable the saturation. Obviously we're gonna plug this into reflection glossiness. Now reflection glossiness will not take any color into consideration, just so you know. Obviously I'm repeating myself again, but it will not take a color into consideration. But I'm doing this just for myself, just to separate that, you know, this is the saturated material. It should be going to bump reflection glossiness or something like that. If you will make this as a color one, it's not gonna change. So as you can see the preview, I'm desaturating it, it's not changing at all, and that's not gonna change even if you're gonna render, obviously. So I'm desaturating just because I'm gonna sleep better at night, right? That's it. That's all I'm doing. Now the reflection will take a color into consideration. So you have to think about it. Do you want that colorful reflection, or you want to desaturate it a bit, or do you want to make it completely desaturated, right? So for the reflection, usually you don't really need to apply this texture at all. Sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't. For example, for materials like leather, in most cases you will apply a bitmap into reflection, because leathers really like to work like that. But for example, for marble, stones, or whatever, usually, you know, you can get away without reflection map, all right? But what we can do with V-Ray, obviously, and you know, any other render engine, we can go to this material and start blending. So for example, I'm gonna blend 40 maybe percent and 40 for this one for now. So I'm getting some obviously reflection back, and I will put this to 2. All right, and maybe 150 here. So it will be reflective, but not too much, right? So I'm gonna put this to 2.4 maybe. We'll see how that's gonna look. Maybe 2.2 for now, and I'm gonna put this to 8. There we go. So it should look quite matte. And let's just say we're gonna put this to 60. Let's just say how that's gonna look, and let's just say we're gonna put this to 200, 500. All right, somewhere near there, 450. So something like that should work okay-ish. Right, and let's just call this material our stone version 2, right? There we go. And let's just apply this here, and obviously we're gonna get a different result. And I'm just curious one thing, what is the size of, okay, so it's a bit too big, right? So what we need to do here is just apply maybe 2 and 2 here, and that should be updated instantly. There we go. Maybe 1.6. 1.6. There you go. So something like that. So now I'm gonna render a couple of regions for you guys just to see how this material is reacting. So there you go. So as you can see, this is quite matte looking, right? So let's just say I want to increase this effect even further. So I can go here and put this to 3. There we go. So as you can see here, the bump map is not that strong, but at the same time, this material should be used for example, kitchen worktops or something like that, right? Something along those lines. There we go. So just keep in mind that this texture is not a big texture, right? So if we check this, this texture is 2.9, right? So obviously it is not a 4K or a 5K texture, but it should work perfectly fine, right? So there we go. We can create something like that. And obviously, you know, you can try to play around with some translucency for these kind of materials, but I wouldn't recommend doing that, right? Just because it will take longer to render. I will show you how to do that later on. So let's just say this material is gonna be okay for now. Let me just render this region here as well, this highlight. All right, so I think I'm happy with this material for now. Let us create something different now. So I think I will keep this, I will take this simple material here. So by the way, if you want to move the whole, if you want to move just the node, you could just click with your mouse button and move it all like that. Or you click, or you press Ctrl plus Alt and you click on the V-Ray material and it will move the whole tree. If you're gonna click on the other one, it's gonna move from right to left, right? So I'm gonna move that, I'm gonna move all of that, etc, right? And if you just click with your mouse button here, you're gonna move everything separately, just so you know. All right, so let's just create something different now. So stone version 3. So I'm gonna create a couple of options just for you guys to get a better understanding, you know, what are we dealing with here. So for example, I can take this material as well. There we go. Let's just do that. So I'm gonna put that there. And we will be creating some translucency from these materials later on, right? So I will put this to the test. So there we go, applying there. So the orientation is a bit wrong, so let me just rotate this. There we go. And I think the size for now is gonna be fine, right? So what I wanna do now is obviously, if we're gonna test it out, it's gonna be reflective, right? There we go. So it really depends what you're trying to get, but for example, you know, you can make some tear and wear effects. So for example, I can go to my texture, sorry, there we go, and some maybe dirt maps and apply, I don't know, whatever. We can apply some scratches if we want. I have some scratches here somewhere. There we go. So we can apply that as a, I don't know, 8. It's gonna be quite small, and plug it into reflection glossiness. There we go. So now if I'm gonna render this region here, this is what we're getting here now. So obviously you want to mix it up a bit. You don't want to over exaggerate this. There you go. So you're seeing a bit of those scratches there, especially on the highlights, right? And keep in mind this, that you always can mix your marble or your stone textures with the color that you want to pick. And I've done this so many times, honestly, and it did help a lot. So for example, For example, I'm gonna render this guy here, right? Now you see the texture really clearly, right? Everything is good and dandy. For example, you want to mix it up a bit, but basically make this effect less visible. So let's just say I'm gonna put the diffuse to, I don't know, something creamy, like something maybe desaturated, and along those lines maybe. So something like that, right? And let's just say I'm gonna try to drop this by 50, bam. All right, so as you can see, I instantly change the effect of this material by just mixing a color with that material. So for example, I will reintroduce the texture again. There we go. So that's how you can manipulate with with colors and all of that kind of stuff. Or for example, I'm gonna click this to 100 again, so this color is not gonna take any effect. And let's just say I want to do that in a different way, right? So let's just say, ignore this for now, I'm just gonna make a copy, right? So you're gonna have to plug it in. So you can change the color really easily. So by going into composite, plugging this into layer 1, creating a new layer, desaturating this color completely, there we go, right? And another thing is really important is just plugging a V-Ray color. And for example, I want to make it purple. Something like that, right? It's just an example, bam. And then you just press color. That's it. And you can control the lightness by controlling this bitmap here. So for example, 50 or 100, right? And if I'm gonna apply that there, I'm instantly getting this kind of color, right? And you can change whatever color you want, right? So yellowish, greenish, or something like that, right? A bit more reddish maybe. More saturated maybe. So you're getting a full effect of the texture, by the way. You're not getting, half of the texture or something like that. You're getting a full texture in this solution right here. So this is how you can play around. Sorry guys, I'm drinking tea. So this is how can you play with color corrections, composite, changing some people, I even have sometimes I get questions from people, how can I change this color or whatever. Honestly, it's a really simple thing to do, and it's a really quick thing to do. You don't need to import into Photoshop or anything like that. You just play around with desaturating the texture, plugging a V-Ray color, and plugging into composite and using a color. You can use a blend, but that's just multiply, but that's just gonna make it a lot darker. So you want to use a color mode, just because it's just gonna take this color out, and then you will control the lightness of it with this color correction here. So up and down, up and down. So either you can control RGB, or either you can control this guy, or you can control gamma contrast, right? By the way, just keep this in mind. It will take the saturation, right? So this is the saturation. It will take the saturation, right? The lightness will not take effect, just so you know. So the saturation will, all right? So just keep that in mind. So this is the approach that you can use, or you can blend with a color if you want to. So I will delete this guy and that guy. So as you can see, you're getting a decent effect, right? And obviously keep this in mind. This material is gonna be quite fast to render. Obviously keep in mind that this is a reflection material, and you have some dirt maps, whatever you have there. It will take all of that into consideration, right? Obviously, but it will be, maybe 2 or 3 or even 4 times faster to render than a translucency material. And sometimes, honestly, you know, some people don't, basically they cannot afford a more expensive CPU or something like that. And V-Ray is just a perfect render engine for those kind of people that cannot afford a really expensive machine or something like that, because you can optimize things with V-Ray by quite a bit. Even, you know, with rendering settings, you have the full control. You can feel you can feel yourself like a DJ there, right? If you know what you're doing. But like I said, be really careful with translucency materials, because, you know, if you're gonna make a bathroom with all the tiles in with translucency material, and you know, you're gonna go to the company, you're gonna hit that render button, and your render is gonna take you know, 7 hours or so. So obviously some people come to the companies and say, oh my god, you guys have, you know, 30 or 50 different nodes, right? A rendering farm. Why can I not render this blah 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 in 2 hours using all the nodes? Well, basically you are gonna be quite impolite, and you're gonna be occupying all of those nodes. And maybe some people are rendering some other stuff. Maybe some people are rendering some other animations. Maybe they have deadlines in 2 hours, right? And you're gonna be occupying those nodes for, you know, for that amount of time. You really have to, you know, weight everything. You cannot be selfish, especially when you're working in a company. When you're working as a freelancer, you know, do whatever you want to do. You know, you can render an image for 5 days if you want to. That, you know, there's no problem with that. But when you are going to work in a company, you have to fix your ego and your attitude, right? You have to know what you're doing, basically. So I'm gonna press escape now here. And you know, this material is looking decent enough. Like I said, please play around with glossiness, with reflection, whatever you want to play with, right? And let's just say we want to create another option of this material. So I'm gonna drop it up. Oh, that's the wrong name. Stone version 3. And that's gonna be Stone version 3 underscore 02, right? So that's gonna be another version. And for this version, we're gonna use this bitmap, desaturated because I want it, and reflection glossiness. All right, so reflection glossiness, sorry, that's the wrong reflection glossiness. There we go. So we can apply this guy. By the way, don't be afraid of using, you know, a couple of maps. You always can use the mix channel there. You can mix it up. For example, plug that there, and use it at 50%, for example, if you want to, or use it, you know, you can make one a bit more dominating. So for example, in this case, I will make this texture more dominating, and I will apply this here, right? And let's just say, you know, I can control this with another color correction if I want to. There we go. So if you want to drag a node and just basically put this in the middle somewhere on this wire here, and it will pop in, right? It's really useful. So with this color correction, you can control the lightness of the bitmap, right? And obviously your texture is going to become darker and darker. Let's just say I'm going to use this at 50. All right, so there you go. So now we should get a matte looking stone material, right? So press pair mode. There you go. So in these cases, what I usually do is I apply, so I don't have any bump map. I don't really want to apply a bump map on this texture. It really depends what sample do you have in your hands or in front of you, right? So in this case, I can apply a bit more reflection, right? So let's just say we can keep this to 150, just to get that nice reflection effect, right? And don't be afraid of using by the way, this bitmap here, which is the scratches one, are not working together. So I'm just gonna delete, sorry, whoops. And by the way, I'm having this bug with V-Ray Next. Is basically I cannot sometimes delete a material from material editor. So what you need to do is basically open F10, your rendering settings. or close it, and then you will be able to delete it again. I don't know, some kind of a flaw in the code. So there you go. That's a really matte material. Let's just try to create this a bit more glossy. Bam. And maybe more. So I'm controlling now just the texture, right? So I should get some variations in there. There we go. So let's just use this at 80. And it's really matte. All right. So let us do 600. All right. Now we can get, you know, effects like that. And just remember this. You can use different stone materials, right? So for example, what I mean by different stone materials, as in to get different effects, different reflection glossiness effects or something like that, right? You can mix them up. So you don't really need to use the same one. You can use a different one and create a completely different effect, right? So for example, now it's a bit too much. So I'm going to use 400. So let's just say, yep. So let's just say I'm going to mix it up by 50. And I still should see some, there you go. So I am seeing some reflection glossiness there either way. We can try to experiment with the bump map if you want to, obviously. Like I said, it really depends what is your sample and what you need to get from it, right? Because I'm creating these materials from, honestly, from thin air. I don't have any examples or anything like that. If I would have an example, if I would see how it looks, I would definitely recreate it, right? It's an easy thing to do for me, but I have to have a sample or a reference on the internet or something like that. And then obviously I will be able to recreate it, right? Or recreate it at like 80 or 90% of similarity, right? So there you go. To me, honestly, this bump map is working, but at the same time, I don't really like it, right? So there you go. We have another stone effect, which could work in bathroom tiles or something like that, right? Maybe some cheaper bathroom tiles or so. So that's another material. So this is a more like a stone material. So let me create another variation here. All right, so let's do something like, so that was stone version 3. Let's do stone version 4. So I'm calling it stone, but I might import maybe marble. I don't know. Let's see. Let's see what we have. All right, so the next one can be this granite material, right? Oh, so this is a really standard material for the kitchens and worktops in general. So this granite material is obviously it's really common, right, for the kitchens, and you can get them in every color, in every texture and whatever. So honestly, you would never apply a translucency material on it unless you want to get some kind of a weird effect, right? But usually these worktops are not using any translucency at all, unless it's gonna be mostly translucency effect is visible on really thick marble materials, like from 2 centimeters or so, or even less. So for example, I have a reference here. So as you can see here, this is a tile, and you can literally see the translucency in it, right? So on these edges, as you can see here, and this material obviously will have some translucency. Same thing for this one. You can see that the light is scattering a bit. Obviously it's hard to notice it, but it is there. Obviously all the marble materials will give you this nice translucency in a way, right? You just have to play around with it and see how it's gonna work. Even this material here, as you can see, this kitchen worktop, it is translucent, right? You can see how it obviously if you don't understand how translucency works, basically I'm gonna try to simplify this. Basically the light enters the surface and that light scatters through the whole object, or maybe from, or maybe for only 2 or 3 or 1 centimeter thickness, right? The light is going to scatter and it will change the look of the material a bit, right? The material will become a bit lighter. It's like, it's like putting a flashlight through your finger or through your palm, and obviously your fingers are going to scatter that warm or blue or warm light of the flashlight through your fingers, and your fingers are gonna look quite I don't know, reddish or pinkish or whatever, right? Obviously you have blood in your fingers, obviously in your body, if you didn't know that. So obviously that color will become a bit like a pinkish red, I don't know, warmish color, right? So this is how it's, almost acting in marble as well, right? So obviously this material in general, it's white. Inside is obviously, if I'm gonna cut it with a razor, or sorry, with some really with a proper tool, if I'm gonna cut this in half, obviously that inside is gonna be white as well. So this material will not really, will not gonna bring you this warm color unless you're shining with a really warm, really bright flashlight or something like that, or even the interior light is really, warm. So then that light is gonna scatter a bit into the surface of this object here. All right, so so yeah, that's how, the marble, for example, I can show you this on a better result, maybe marble statue. And obviously some will be translucent a bit more, some will be translucent a bit less. I cannot find a perfect example now. Whoops. All right, so something like that, right? So you could get effects like that, or something like that. So you can see that the light is quite translucent. And honestly, when you're creating, architectural visualizations, obviously, rarely you're gonna get these kind of objects, unless, like I said, for decorations or something like that. But for worktops, for for tiles or something like that, you want to really simplify this effect, right? And you don't want to take a long time to render, right? So that's translucent as well. If I'm gonna shine a flashlight into this object, it will change a color or the look of it, right? All right, anyways, so let's just try to apply this texture here. It's a really simple texture. So honestly, I'm just gonna call it maybe granite version 1, for example. I'm gonna apply it here, and obviously the approach is gonna be really simple as well. If this seems obviously too simple for you guys and too boring, just fast forward to an end of this video or something like that. I don't know, but I will be creating those translucent materials and experimenting with them. But for now, I'm just gonna be showing people how to create these simple materials, right? So I'm gonna create this to 4.4 just to make it a bit smaller. And I want to make this obviously reflective. So the more lighter material you have, the more reflection you want to add, because obviously lighter objects will give you less reflection. It's just how it is, right? Darker objects, darker colors will reflect more. So just so you know, right? All right, so let me just try to render this guy. All right, so now you can see that this object is a bit too shiny, and the IOR is a bit too big. So I'm gonna drop that to 1.8 maybe. And I think I'm gonna drop this reflection a bit, just a bit. Let's just try to put this to 70 and bring back this to 2.2. There we go. So like I said, for stone materials, don't try to increase the reflection to 255 or something like that. Try to experiment with the reflection using a low reflection approach and using a higher IOR and experimenting in between that, right? And you don't want to really, you know, overexpose these highlights really much, right? Really badly. So you would apply this on your worktop in the kitchen or something like that, right? You can even get it like a matte looking material, which is obviously it's not ideal for this material. Usually this material is going to look something along these lines. It's going to be quite reflective, right? But you can get matte looking surfaces, obviously. All right, so this is number one granite. So I will show you another granite. So you can see that how simple it is to set up these kind of materials, and they just, you know, these are really quick materials to create, right? So I'm gonna create another one, and you can always apply scratches, smudges, or whatever you want to apply if you have time, right? So I'm gonna apply another material there. All right, so let's just try to maybe not that one. Let's try this one. I'm not sure if it's seamless or not. Let me check. I want to apply another granite, so let's just check what we have here. All right, so we have this one. It's a bit low res. All right, we have this one, which is quite cool. Let's just try that one for now. We're gonna create a couple of options, right? So I'm gonna drag that there. Sorry, I'm gonna drag that there, and I'm gonna drag this as 0.6. Apply that on my object, and as you can see, you will see that. Sorry, first of all, let me try to put this to 1.5. 1.5 there, maybe. Let's try 2. There you go. So this texture is not that big, but it should work just fine. All right, so you will see now that the reflections will become a bit more sharper just because the object became more darker, right? There you go. So the reflections are more visible now. And as you can see, this this texture here could use some translucency in it, but we're not gonna experiment with translucency yet. I'm still wanna try to, you know, install this idea how to create these stone materials, these simple ones. So you're gonna use these materials for, you know, most oftenly in your company projects or something like that, but obviously for your personal projects you can experiment a bit more with translucency and all of that kind of stuff. So, and then again, you can always apply some glossy reflections and all of that kind of stuff. So there we go. So that's another one, and maybe let's just try to create a couple more. So I'm gonna try to create this as a version 3 maybe, and let's find maybe a blackish granite. So nope, that's obviously not granite. That's just a change color. That's quite ugly. And all right, so we can always invert. So that's really important as well, by the way. So let me just check. All right, so we have a black one, something like this. So we can try to use this one. So just so you know, you can always play around with the same bitmap, right? So that was, let's just say this was white. So for example, now I'm gonna invert, right? So basically all the white speckles are gonna become white, blah, 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 blah. So I'm gonna desaturate this and I'm gonna drop it to 20 maybe, right? So if I'm gonna do that, look what's gonna happen now. So I'm gonna apply this here and I'm gonna apply on the object, and that's how easy it is to change just the color, right? There you go, you have your black granite. And if you want, you can apply hues, and you know, you can desaturate this completely if you want to make it completely black or a bit bluish. Really depends. So you can just press invert, In some situations, obviously, it really depends what kind of texture do you have, and you can just plug it in, basically desaturate, plug it in. So that's one, and I think I'm gonna do the last one. So obviously feel free to add scratches or smudges or something like that, and you should be good to go, right? And let's just try to create the last one for granite. So I'm just gonna close that because I'm getting that bug again. All right, so let me just select this one and put this as a version 4. All right, so version 4, there we go. And let's just plug this guy in. Honestly, we don't need a color correction here, I think, because I want to use that texture. So, all right, so let's just apply this texture here. See how it looks. All right, so the texture looks quite neat. Let me just put this on some of the area, 08 maybe. All right, and let's just check. Maybe we can make it a bit more matte looking, right? So maybe 95, there we go. So put that on. There we go. So we are getting a completely different result here. There we go. And you would apply this on your worktops, etc., right? Usually these granite materials are usually applied on worktops, splashbacks and all that kind of stuff. You can, try to play around with tiling as well. I'm not sure how it's gonna work. Never seen that quite oftenly that people would use granite for floors or whatever, but obviously, nowadays you can get anything you want. All right, so this is getting a bit too boring. All right, so like I said, feel free to add some reflection glossiness because you can you can play around a bit more with some different effects. Obviously, there are some you can make some wear, tear and wear effects with the dirt map. I was showing that in my other videos of how to create V-Ray materials, so please do check that out. Basically just using a dirt map and applying different materials, right? So these are really simple approaches. By the way, I didn't show you guys how to apply obviously a simple marble material, but that's gonna be pretty much similar. So let me just obviously copy this and just call it. So we're gonna create a marble material, which is gonna be a quite common one, a white marble material. So I will delete that for now, and I will try to find a marble material, a white marble material. Not that one, maybe. I don't know, maybe we can use this one for now. All right, so I will plug it in there. I'm not sure if I like this one. What about this one? All right, maybe this one. I don't really like. All right, you know what? Let's try it. Okay, let's try it. Let's try it, see how it looks. So, by the way, if you get a marble material, sorry, texture, and if it's looking like that, so I'm gonna show you just in a sec. If it's looking something like that, really, really light, right? So literally that color is almost 255, I think. V-Ray color. If I'm gonna pick this material, yeah, it's 254, whatever, doesn't matter. If it's above 220, if it's above this number, all right, plug a color correction and just drop down this RGB channel. Drop it to 80 or something like that. Just make it so it's gonna be around 160, 180 or something like that. 150, that's perfect. just because this material will blow out a bit, right? Because it's a white marble material, and especially with translucency on. So just try to make it obviously darker, right? Below that 200 or 220 line. You can always make it lighter. That's a really easy fix. But obviously, if the texture is overexposed, which it shouldn't be, that's another story, right? So everything is fine. Everything is by default here. I can drop it to 100 again. There we go. So I will apply this guy on this material, this dummy here. And as you can see, the object is, I don't know, the scaling is, I think the tiling is fine. I'm not sure. This texture is really small in tiling, so I'm not sure how it's gonna look. All right, so let's just say that's gonna work fine. So let's just say I will press the IPR mode, the progressive rendering, and so this is how, by the way, I want to put this to 2, and I want to make this a bit more glossy, matte looking, right? Oops, sorry, that's gonna be 8. Maybe 8.5, and put this to 0.5. All right, there we go. So this is how this marble is looking at the moment. All right. So let me just try to object properties, renderable, bam. Right. So I'm rendering now, obviously with the plane, but sorry, we're rendering now this without the plane. So just the HDRI and this object in the scene. So now you can see that how this, ignore the noise, this is just a noise, but you can see how fast it is rendering on my potato CPU, and how, you know, decent like this material is looking, right? So for example, you know, I can even apply some, maybe, I don't know, scratches, for example. I can go for 8 and 8, or smudges or something like that. Doesn't matter. Reflection, glossiness, bam. And we'll put this to maybe 15. Let's just see. Maybe that's a bit too much. Maybe 7. There we go. So I'm thinking just a small detail, you know, just to break it up a bit. So there you go. So this is a white marble texture material, whatever you want to call it, right? And I'm using a 2.5 IOR, which is a bit higher, and reflection to what, 70. All right. So you don't want to put, you know, 255. It just looks horrible, right? I'm going to drop it down to 70 again, and that's this material. It looks like marble. It looks smooth. It looks quite nice, right? So I'm just gonna drop this region here. Now, I will be showing you, we will be experimenting with some translucency effect. So please, you know, make a coffee and sit back and relax, guys. So now we have an example how it does look with a simple V-Ray material, right? And obviously it renders quite fast. It renders, by the way, really fast, even on my potato CPU. So I'm just gonna press stop for now, or press cancel, escape, sorry. And so this is marble number 1, right? So we're gonna try to experiment with this a bit more. So let's just say I will save this example here. By the way, if you want to activate this history here, that's the button here. You have to activate there, and that's the history there. And basically what you need to do is obviously activate it by pressing this button and locating, creating a folder and specifying that file path. So basically this is going to be outputting somewhere in that folder where you specified. So just keep that in mind. All right, so let me first check if I don't have any, nope, I don't have any color corrections. Everything is raw, right? So I will copy this material here. All right, so we're gonna make this marble version 1, but underscore T, right? So that's going to be translucency in V-Ray material inside of the V-Ray material, right? So now I hope that we're going to see the effect, because I don't really want to play around with the lighting, because obviously changing the lighting will give us different effects, just so you know, because I was playing around with the thickness. I remember in one video, I think in plastic or glass, I can't remember now, but I was playing with thickness, and I basically wasn't seeing any difference, right? Because the lighting was this studio lighting. Now, if you are going to change a light, or the lighting, the whole lighting system, right? So for example, you would have nothing in your scene and it would shine one light from the back or from the side, and then you will be playing around with these settings here. The effect is gonna be completely different, just so you know, right? So I'm not gonna show you guys 5 different lighting setups for this material or whatever. That's just gonna be crazy, right? I mean, it's gonna take a lot of time. So I'm gonna use the same lighting, and you know, you're gonna see what you're gonna see. But like I said, translucency works really differently in different lighting situations, right? So keep that in mind, and even from the thickness of your object, from your texture and everything else, right? So really, it's a play around situation. You just have to know where to, obviously, what to press and where to go, but in general, it's experimentation to get that nice looking effect. So I will be creating obviously 25 materials as usual, and selling them. You will be able to get them, but in here we're just going to be playing around, and you will see how it's reacting. Okay, so like I said, this material here, which is this stone material here, it is using, as you can see, well, reflection and glossiness, you can ignore that because it's just some scratches on, but obviously this will increase the rendering time by a bit, because V-Ray is going to be calculating that as well. But what I did is basically, I had this texture, I plugged it into diffuse, obviously, right? So you want to plug this into diffuse if you want to get that texture. And obviously I did make this a color correction from this node, and I plugged it into translucency. So translucency is basically, sorry, I'm just double click there. So the translucency is basically this setting here. So basically backside color. So it will be translucent in that color. It will be manipulating that color. Fall color as well, I did plug it in as well, because it was giving me that effect that I wanted, right? So like I said, it's definitely playing around with these settings just to get that nice effect. There is no, it's a bit more easier with plastics or glass materials. You can literally just press this to full, because to activate the translucency, you have to make this refractive. You have to have refraction, and then you play around maybe a bit with the fall color, and you just change this to hybrid or whatever. Hybrid usually works really well with glass or plastics. For marble materials, I usually use hard wax model. It works quite well. For the hybrid, it will work as well, but it can give you a bit different effect, right? We will be experimenting with that as well, right? So in this case, the first thing I want to do is we'll play around with this a bit more, right? So so let's just say I will apply this on my object. All right, so there we go. So I will keep this here. So now I do have this preview, which took 20 seconds with this first V-Ray marble material, which was the simple setup. And now I'm gonna apply some refraction, right? So I'm gonna be constantly rendering this, right? So light cache, there we go. So now I'm gonna apply some refraction. Bam. What's happening is obviously you're applying refraction. Duh. So now what you need to do is, let's just say now I want to activate. So obviously this color, the fall color, leave it alone, don't control it yet, right? We will play around that later on. So now you want to apply this translucency on, right? So don't use the soft water model, because that's the old model, and it's, I think they left it for compatibility issues or whatever, doesn't matter. But put this on the hard wax, right? So now you're seeing how it's behaving, right? So you can already see that this material is starting to take translucency, right? Honestly, I will try to make this a bit different. Sorry guys. Or maybe we'll experiment with that a bit later. I wanted to put a light there and shine onto this edge there, but the thing is we are comparing two same lightings, so I don't want to mess around too much, right? So I don't want to mix things up for you guys. All right, so let's just continue experimenting with this. So I did apply, sorry, let me just check the IPR mode. There we go. So it is refractive, right? So look what's gonna happen when I'm gonna disable more and more of that refraction. So you can still see the refraction, right? You can still see the refraction. See that line there? Yeah, that doesn't look right, right? So for example, I will remove it, right? And you see less and less, but obviously the object is still a bit translucent, right? And if I'm gonna do this black, this object is not gonna be translucent at all. So we want the full translucency for the moment. So we're gonna add this to full. And what we're gonna do next is we're gonna try to switch to hybrid mode, right? So look, I used everything is the same. I didn't change anything, right? Look how it changed the material look from hard wax to hybrid. Bam, hard wax, and that's hybrid. All right, so now look what's gonna happen when if I'm gonna change the fall color, right? Changing the fall color. Obviously you can see that it's starting to get really, really slow to render, right? Really slow to render. But you can start seeing that nice looking effect, right? So let's just say I'm gonna press OK on the fall color. So that's the fall color. So now I'm gonna switch to hybrid mode. And you're seeing almost the same effect, right? So now I'm gonna switch this to 255. Bam, hybrid model and hard wax model. So what you need to know now that this is the hybrid model and the hard wax model, they're working a bit differently, but at the same time, they're kind of gonna give you the same result. So look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna switch this 255 color to 254. Bam. Same thing, right? And now look what's gonna happen if this color will remain 254. Right, so 255 color didn't change anything with the hard wax. Now look what's gonna happen when I'm gonna change this color. I'm gonna leave this color to 254. Sorry, I'm gonna put this color to 255, and I'm gonna switch to hybrid. Bam, it's glass. Now look what's gonna happen when I'm gonna change this to 254. So see how it's changing it, right? So it does need a lower white value or whatever should I say, right? So as you can see, it does give you a bit of a different effect, right? So if you wanna my recommendation would be this one. Let's try not to mix these things up for now. So obviously we're gonna try to use a hard wax model for now, and we can try to experiment with a hybrid later on, right? So we're gonna be playing around with this white marble for now, right? So so the color, so I'm dropping the color down. So look what's happening when I'm dropping the color down. So obviously the object is becoming more solid and more marbly looking, right? So it does give you that nice looking reflection. So look what's gonna happen if I'm gonna drop to black. Bam, no translucency at all, right? Literally dead. All right, so I'm gonna pull that to somewhere, let's just say in the middle, right? So I'm gonna pull this somewhere in the middle. So obviously you can see how slower it gets to render it, right? And now let's just try to put this to 0, right? So we just control the color. So I'm gonna put this to 0, bam. So basically it killed the translucency effect, you know, the strongest effect, and basically we got something like this with 1 and this with the lightest color, right? So we got something like this and this. So see how they are playing, right? So for example, I'm gonna drop this to 0.5, 0.2, 0.1, and I'm gonna drop it again to 1. See, nothing changes. But when I switch this to the middle, the rendering time obviously increases just because the translucency is taking a lot more effect. And when I'm gonna drop this to a lower number, the effect is still gonna be there, but if I'm gonna drop this to 0, I will kill the effect. So just obviously be careful with this number as well, because you can kill the effect with this number as well, okay? So obviously I want you to understand what, one. So I want you to understand what these obviously, you know, options are doing to your material, right? So, all right, so we know that this color will obviously kill the effect or increase the effect, or literally just make this, you know, really weird effect. If you're using 255 color, it will be faster to render, as you can see here, but the moment you're gonna go below, the more scattering effect you're getting, and the harder it is to render for V-Ray, right? And another thing is you can change a color there, right? So if you have a color, obviously you will understand that you can change a color, right? So if I'm gonna change that, press OK, you will see that the color changes and you're getting a different color, right? And it doesn't even matter if we have a diffuse channel here, right? So if I'm gonna unplug this guy, I'm getting this color here. If I'm gonna plug this to white, all right, so I'm getting the same thing. So now I'm gonna plug this, oh, by the way, sorry. So now I'm gonna control the bias. So 1, 5, you can see that it's, whoops, sorry about that. So that region was somewhere there, I think. All right, let's just drop this to -5. So you can see that the material does become a bit darker and more contrasty. Let's just keep this for now at 0. And let's just plug this material, this marble material, into this fog color, right? Instance, bam. So now we should start getting this this material here as a fog color, right? So it should give us a, you know, a nice looking effect. All right, there we go. So it does give us some, you know, different effects in some situations, as you can see. So the black colors are obviously blocking the translucency a bit, and as you can see, it looks so pretty cool, right? So you're getting these kind of a realistic light blockings or whatever. I'm not sure how to you know, how to pronounce this result, but it does look really nice, right? It does look that this stone has a lot of translucency inside of it, right? So if you're wondering what's gonna happen with the diffuse channel, if I'm plugging the diffuse channel, you can see that it's not really, you know, we're not seeing that material working really well, right? So I'm gonna unplug this and I will plug this guy into backside color, right? So by the way, you can have a color here as well. So you can control the, you know, make it a bit warmer if you want to or whatever. So for example, let me just render this. So see, now we change the hue a bit, but still we're getting that really nice stony marbly effect, right? So without this material, now look how, you know, flat and boring it looks, right? Because we come on, region. Look how boring it looks, and it doesn't look like, you know, really bad. It does look like a stone material or some, but the thing is, it does look boring. So I definitely recommend you guys, if you have a marble material or something like that, to plug this into the fog color, because it does work really well. You're getting these different patches and light blockings, and you will get different effects. So this just looks beautiful, right? It looks beautiful. It looks beautiful, guys. All right, so obviously if you want to kill this effect, you will not kill this, sorry, wrong number. So let me just render that with that. I'm just, sorry guys, I'm just making sure that I'm explaining this right. All right, cool. So if you want to kill this effect a bit more, you want to try to, you know, reduce this color, right? So when you will try to reduce this effect, if you have this plugged into the diffuse, just keep that in mind, right? I want to make this clear. This effect, right? It's gonna be almost like 50%. So let's just say I'm gonna do this 100, it's somewhere in the middle, right? So what I'm doing here is basically activating this diffuse color again by 50%, and I'm using the translucency by 50%, right? Jesus, Viri, come on, just hold that region, come on. I'm trying to explain to people. All right, so as you can see here, you're getting this obviously marbly effect, but at the same time, keep in mind, this is gonna be faster to render as well. You're still getting a marbly looking effect, right? But it's gonna be faster to render because you're evaluating only 50% of that translucency effect, right? So you're blending it with the diffuse, right? So you're kind of removing that. Just keep in mind, if you're gonna kill this to black color, you're not gonna have any translucency into your material. Just keep that in mind, right? And you can get some, you know, weird effects and whatnot. So just be really careful. But as you know, you would want to, you know, use the full advantage of the translucency, right? So for now, we're gonna keep this as is, and let's just try to play around with this a bit further on, right? So let's just try increase the fog color. So you can see that increasing the fog bias to a positive number, your material does become lighter. So it's almost like a light multiplier. So if I'm gonna put this to 0 by default, if I'm gonna put this to 2, you can see that you're kind of getting the same-ish effect, but in a way it looks a tiny bit different. But as you can see, I just increase or decrease. So for example, 0, I just kill the effect. So you can see that in how many situations, in how many different types you can kill the effect, right? So light multiplier 1, 2. So if I'm going to put that to 2, that's just going to be double, and that's just going to look ugly, right? So I'm going to put this to 0, and I'm going to put this to 1. And I want to do another example, which is going to be moving this same texture into this color here. As an instance, there we go. All right, so now we can try to increase this to 1.5. So make it a bit lighter. And now we can try to decrease this 1000 centimeters. I'm not sure if that's true, but let's just say 10. So honestly, my naked eye cannot spot the difference in between 1000 and 10 centimeters, right? So for example, I'm gonna put this to 0. We killed it completely. 1 centimeter only. So you can see that we start seeing an effect, which is obviously your material is getting less light, right? So it's scattering less through your object. All right, so let's just say I'm gonna put 5. So 5 literally works almost like a 1000 or so. So 50 looks kind of the same. 5000 looks kind of the same, right? So obviously my object is not that thick. Maybe it's like 40 centimeters there, right? So I'm gonna keep this as a 20 for now. Okay, so scatter coefficient, read about it on a V-Ray chaos group documents. I was talking about this in my previous videos, which was plastic or glass, I cannot remember now, but obviously experiment with these numbers as well, right? Because it's gonna give you different different approaches, different options as well. But obviously this looks just horrible because it changes the lighting, the light scatter basically, and it doesn't look really appealing, right? So you can try to scatter coefficient. You can try to manipulate with these numbers as much as possible. But like I said, what I noticed from these numbers here that usually it does work better somewhere in between 0.5 or 0. Usually it will give you that nice effect basically. Because I'm not a fan of this effect, I usually like something between 1.5 or 0. There you go. And let's just try to experiment with this number forward and backwards. So 0. So you can see what effect we're getting here. So honestly, you can create really nice looking materials by just manipulating with these numbers. And especially, and that's not only for the marble and stone, that's also gonna be for plastic and glass materials, because plastics and glass materials will have some translucency in some situations, right? So we already can see how this works, right? If I'm gonna put this to 1, put this to, I really like the 0 approach because it does give me a result that I wanted. Basically, what I didn't like is just this effect is maybe too strong. So I would love to, one thing is for sure, it's way too long to render. Even if I would have a 32 core CPU, I'm pretty sure I would not use the full value of this translucency effect, because it's just a nightmare to render, honestly, if you ask me. Obviously I understand why it's doing that, just because obviously V-Ray is taking a lot of calculations, etc, right? But it's just so annoying to render it because it's so slow. So I would definitely want to decrease this effect by just obviously plugging this to the diffuse. And another thing is to decreasing this number to maybe something and a half or something like that, right? So something creating something like that, basically something in between, basically that's what I'm trying to say. So you're still getting this marbly effect, right? So I will render this region right here now. So fast forward please, because I don't want to pause this. All right, so there we go. We rendered this guy out, and I'm gonna press save. And that was our first approach. Did I press on it, or did I save on the same one? Oh my god, come on. Oh, sorry, that's the same one, yeah. So honestly now, I'm not sure did we render the same one, or does it look exactly the same when I switch to half of it? All right, that's kind of weird. So I did save that 45 seconds. Let me just apply this guy. All right, so that was really weird. All right, so this is the solid one. I'm re-rendering this again. Come on, let's do it. All right, so I'm gonna save it one more time. So it took 21. So this is... All right, Vera, you don't want to switch. That's perfect. All right, there we go. It started to switch. Sorry, you just need to restart it, I think. All right, so that was the first one. That was the translucency one, right? So the translucency one looks obviously a bit different. It looks like it's scattering the light. So I'm just gonna delete both of these and just flick between that and that, right? So as you can see, the effect is completely different, right? So let's just try to play around with this a bit more maybe, right? So region there. Let's try that. All right, so let's just try to start to increasing this number a bit more. But like I said, it's so damn slow to render, and even on a simple, sorry, on a slower machine, that's gonna be even more painful than this, right? So let's just say we're getting that effect there. So let us try to remove this for now. All right, this looks a bit flat to my eyes. Let me try to put a color correction and make this maybe, I don't know, darker maybe. Let's see if we can add translucency. Where is it? Let's try that fall color there. All right, so we made it a bit darker. All right, so this is, yeah, I don't really like these patches here because I think they're generated from that guy there, from those black bits there. Let me try to clear those out. And let's just try to remove this refraction a bit. So the diffuse channel will be more stronger now. I mean, we can work with this. Let's try to remove that one as well. And see how now the object is looking. So always please fast forward when I'm rendering, right? I don't mind this, but I prefer if I would, you know, go and plug this into the this color here. I prefer this result a bit more. All right, so basically, yeah. So basically I removed the refraction a bit, so I wanted to make this effect a bit less visible, because if I'm gonna make this refractive 255 color, obviously the effect is gonna be really strong, and at the same time it's gonna be quite slow to render. So play around with the refraction a bit, right? So you wanna kill that effect a bit more. You can make obviously this material a bit lighter as well if you want to. So light, just increase the light multiplier. Obviously I showed you how this can change the effect, and in some situations it's gonna work really well. In some situations you want to get a different lighting scatter. You want your light to scatter a bit differently. So in the middle, your light is gonna scatter in all the directions. By the way, if you want to check these settings, obviously they're just words. You always need to test yourself out. So V-Ray, transluce, there we go. So if you're gonna go here, and you can check these settings by your own. So refract, where's the translucency? So translucency, there we go. So scatter coefficient specifies the amount of scattering inside the object. Value means rays will be scattered in all directions. A value of 1 means they cannot change the direction inside the subsurface scatter, right? So yeah, the thing is, a lot of V-Ray explanations are obviously really quite complicated to understand, especially for the beginner. So how I learned how to work with V-Ray in my 12 years of experience is basically create a really simple studio scene, create a material, create a lighting situation that you would use or something like that, and just obviously play around with those settings to get your desirable result. So for example, now I got this result, right? I'm gonna save it out, and let's just say I'm gonna keep this to 0. And I'm gonna render another example, and obviously we will get a bit of a different effect, right? But still it does look like a marble which has some translucency on, right? And obviously I'm using 213 refraction color, which is obviously a bit blocking our approach there. But you just saw that when I dropped this to 0 just to scatter the light in all the directions, how slower our rendering became, right? So imagine rendering this as your main tile in the bathroom. How long your render is gonna take. There you go, and that's another example. So 56 seconds, 44, and now I really need to do this, apply this material here and render this guy. And I just want to compare the differences. So I will delete this, that's the null one. So yeah, 45, 44 at full, at the scatter coefficient at 0, it took 56 seconds. This one took 15 seconds. That's insanely faster. I mean, that is faster, right? So now the difference. Bam. Oh, come on, V-Ray, Jesus. Can you just show me the result? Yeah, there you go. All right, so that result there didn't work really well just because we applied a fall color into from this texture, which that texture wasn't working really well with this fall color just because we had these black spots there, black texture inside of it, right? So it was blocking the light, right? So that's why we got this really weird effect. But if that contrast would be a bit more subtle, that effect might work quite nicely. So just please try to experiment with the fog map color as well. And then we deleted the fog color because this texture wasn't working quite well. So we switched to just the translucency material there. So there you go. And we obviously put that to 1, and we put this to 213, not at full. And obviously we did get a quite nice effect. So I will delete that because it wasn't working for us really well. And this effect is with 0 scatter coefficient. Obviously it looks nice, but I think it's a bit too much translucent, right? So, and that's let me delete that. That's a duplicate, and that's with our V-Ray standard material. Nothing special there, right? But honestly, when you look at from afar away, it doesn't look bad. It does look like a marble material. First of all, our human eyes are so used to this material, marbles and stones, and wherever you literally can obviously decide that this is a marble material, right? So now if I'm going to switch to 56 seconds, there you go, right? So obviously it does look more realistic and it does look more nicer, right? When I'm going to switch to another example, it does look nice as well, but this one, I don't know, I would need something in the middle, something in between that and that. So maybe I would kill the effect of the refraction a bit more for this 56 seconds result. So it would decrease the rendering time a bit. But in general, this is how you manipulate and this is how you work with the translucency in your V-Ray material. So I hope this made a bit more sense, right? So you can use the diffuse color reflection and the IOR. You control it on your own, whatever your reflection or whatever reflection you want to get. Use the diffuse channel just because whenever you're gonna kill the refraction effect, that diffuse channel will come in handy, right? The fog color, for the fog color, your texture should be quite I don't know how to say, but it shouldn't have a lot of contrast in between patterns or whatever, right? Unless you want to create something really unique, right? In some situations you will use a fog color with a lot of contrast in between the bitmap, right? But in this situation for this marble effect, we were not using this fog color bitmap because this bitmap just doesn't really work with this object here, right? So we did plug this into backside color, which worked perfectly fine. We did increase the light multiplier a bit, and these are the settings that we finally decided to use because it was working quite well for this marble. Now, really important, if I'm gonna switch to another marble, that's gonna look different, right? So for example, this marble right here that I created, so you can see that, so I saved this, sorry. So you can see I'm double clicking here, there we go. So you can see that this marble worked perfectly fine with plugging into the fog color, plugging this into the fog color and plugging this into the backside color. So this marble material worked perfectly fine, right? But this just because this bitmap was quite average, right? I mean, it wasn't giving us a lot of different contrast points, right? Like black and white. This is more of a like a subtle, if I'm going to desaturate this, obviously you can see that this is like a averaging the colors a bit, but the texture that we had over here has a really massive contrast, which is white and black. That area there, if I'm gonna right click it, it's almost completely black. So there you go, those points there are almost completely black. That's almost black as well. So that's why that fog color wasn't working quite well for us. All right, so this is like I said, 15 seconds, very simple material, looks okay with me. The client is never gonna notice that, right? The client is only gonna notice the texture. Now the translucency material looks nice. It gives you this translucency on the edges and in the whole material. Like I said, with a different lighting situation, it will look different. And this is a more subtle effect. This is somewhere, if I'm going to switch from this to this, that's not a lot of difference, right? Obviously there is a difference, but not a dramatic difference, right? And you can easily get away with this one. So imagine this, you're rendering a massive object in animation. Every frame is taking 50 seconds and every frame is taking 15 or 10 seconds, right? So If you're rendering 3000 frames or 2000 frames, imagine how long your rendering is going to take. So be really mindful about, you know, what you are using and what kind of project are you working on, because, you know, you can get some people pissed, especially if you are working in a company, right? So keep that in mind, right? All right, so it's up to you to decide, is it worth it or not? Is it worth it to play around with that marble material in that shot? It's up to you, right? It's really up to you to decide if it's worth it. If I would be rushing in a project, I would never, you know, play around with this kind of material unless, you know, I would really, really want to and I would have the time. Anyways, enough ranting here. Let's just try to experiment a bit with fast SSS material, which is also slow to render, right? Which is also slow to render. So fast SSS, and we are gonna keep exactly the same material because we want to try to experiment with these things, right? So fast SSS, and I'm gonna call it Control C and Control V. SSS, right? 2, whatever, doesn't matter. So I will take this node here, okay, and I will apply this on the material. Bam, there we go. So I will press the IPR mode. By the way, let me first save this. All right, cool. So I did apply render, and instantly what you can see is you didn't do anything to the material, and it's already translucent, as you can see here, right? I didn't do anything on it. So now if I'm gonna apply this material onto where is it, overall color, whoops, there we go, overall color. So you can see that this material is becoming translucent already, right? By the way, you have presets in this material. I just removed the setting. So you can see that it has, by the way, we need to change this to 2. Or 1.8, see what works better, but we're trying to get a marble material, right? So let's just try to increase the glossiness a bit, right? So maybe that's a bit too much, maybe 7 for now. All right, so you can see that the material is already scattering some colors, so you can see that it's changing the hue when you change the scatter color, the subsurface color, right? There you go. So you can see that this material works quite instantly, right? So for example, I'm gonna switch to, that's a simple approach, that's none. So there's gonna be a different calculation involved, and it is faster, as you can see. We can change it to simple. So this is a single scatter modes, right? So now we're using ray trace solid, and you can noticeably see that the result is quite nice, but at the same time it's quite slow, right? It's a lot slower, as you can see here. So if I'm going to switch to simple, you can see it's rendering it a lot faster, right? And refractive, and you can see that it's slow as well, right? So if you want to switch to ray trace solid or ray trace refractive, it will render slower, but with a more precise calculations, right? So it's gonna be, I don't know how to simplify this, basically more calculations, more physically accurate, so they say. So I'm gonna keep this to simple for now. All right, so I'm gonna keep this to simple, and we will try to change this from simple to ray trace solid as we go, right? But for now, let's just use the default version, right? So I don't want to, you know, overcomplicate this thing too much because it's already complicated. So you have this option called single scatter subdiv. So obviously you have subdivs. The more you increase this, the longer it's going to take to render. Sometimes it's not even useful to change that, right? So at the moment, I'm going to use this to 8. Refraction depth, that's another thing that you don't really need to touch, especially for ArcViz. So keep it at 5. Scatter GI. All right, so this is quite a big one. So I'm gonna try to simplify. This option right here will give you more realistic result, okay? Don't think about anything else. It will give you a more realistic result, especially if you change this to ray trace solid, right? But at the moment, let's keep it without the GI, right? So you can see that it's not scattering the GI. So this is without the GI. This is with the GI, and you can see that the result is different. The translucency looks a bit deeper. So let's just say we want to scatter the GI for now, right? So let's just keep that as is. So I want to show you one more thing. So scale, it's going to be basically make the scatter radius bigger. And 1 and 0, for example, it's gonna just basically start blocking the scattering effect. And as you can see here, you can't get these weird artifacts and whatever. So just keep it at 1 from the beginning, right? So you have these presets here. So skin. So I didn't change anything, right? This is all default. So skin, by the way, you have another skin shader for V-Ray and it's called, I think this AL surface material, but we're not gonna talk about it now. We're just trying to deal with these translucency materials now. So skin brown, skin pink, there you go, skin yellow, milk skimmed. If that looks like milk, yeah, I'm not sure. It doesn't look really like milk. Usually, sometimes you can use this skimmed milk. I used to use this skimmed milk texture, preset for wax. It works quite well for wax. You can get some really cool effects. It does work quite well, honestly, I'm not gonna lie. So if we're gonna switch this to off, obviously you can see that it does look quite nice, and even on the edges you can see the scattering effect, right? And it does look quite cool. So this material fast SSS, as you can see here, you have a lot more control over it, right? So you can even change the preset and work from that preset. So for example, you're creating a wax material, for example. By the way, you can create wax materials with V-Ray translucency as well, but I will be creating a video about how to create wax materials, and we will be experimenting with that a bit more. But for now, we're trying to create, you know, a marble effect material. So for example, now if I'm gonna apply overall texture there, this is what you're gonna get. All right, so obviously we can, you know, if we're gonna apply a color into scatter, subsurface scatter, this is what we're getting here. And maybe let's try to increase this to 6. So we're increasing the IOR. And as you can see, it does work really nicely, right? So basically what I did now is to create this marble look material, right? It was kind of easy, right? If you take a look at it, obviously I'm trying to explain and show examples and, you know, just talk a lot of things about these things, but in general, when you take a look, you know, at a V-Ray material there, you know, there's so many settings controlling the refraction, controlling the fall color, controlling, you know, these settings here as well, controlling a bit of those settings there. It's kind of a bit frustrating if you ask me. Now, I went to fast SSS, right? And I changed to skim milk. I increased the IOR and I plugged, honestly, I plugged one material into a couple of nodes there. So, and that's about it. Basically, that's what I got. So basically, you know, I can remove this subsurface scatter, diffuse color. I can, you know, maybe make it warmer if I want to, right? A tad warmer, maybe. Or I can try to plug this into diffuse as well and see how that's gonna do. So you can see that it did change the hue overall. And scatter color, you know, you can control this by making it desaturated or a bit warmer. It really depends what you're trying to achieve there, but you can see that it's quite simple to work with, right? And you can see that it is rendering a bit faster. It's rendering faster on simple single scatter, right? So now if I'm gonna remove the scatter GI, so now you can see obviously a bit of a difference there. So now scatter GI on, you can see it does look better already. Even from the light cache, you can say, look, when I'm going to switch to scatter GI off, even from the light cache, you can see that the material is looking better, right? If I'm going to scatter GI on, I'm not sure if you can notice it, but yeah, scatter GI, I would recommend turning it on, right? So, all right, so we played around with these colors here. You know, you can apply same things, bump map, specular map, scatter, blah, blah, whatever, scatter color and all that kind of stuff. And you can play around with the glossiness, with the specular color. You know, you can change the specular color to red if you want to, you know, for whatever reason you want to do this, you can do this, right? So honestly, now, even for this result here, I'm kind of happy with the marble effect, and I just changed to skim the milk and I played around with the IOR with some coloring. Everything else is quite by default and all of that kind of stuff. Honestly, V-Ray should create something like marble preset or whatever, just for beginners or whatever, just to, you know, plug a texture in or whatever, and especially for beginners, plug a texture in, make a preset for marble or whatever, and you're good to go basically. So if you want to increase the scattering effect, obviously you have this scatter radius. So for example, at the moment it's 2 centimeters. So for example, if I'm going to do 0, it's gonna basically, you know what I mean, basically you're gonna block the light completely. So it's gonna scatter now 2 centimeters, 5, 10, 50. So it's gonna be really, really translucent. As you can see, you're getting really cool effects, right? So you can literally see that even with this studio lighting, you're getting this really nice effect, right? It does look realistic, right? But obviously it's quite slow to render, as you can see here, right? And I'm using a simple single scatter simple, right? So obviously the scattering calculation is a bit more simpler. So sorry, let me change this to 3 maybe for now. There we go. That's even looks nice from the light cache. So phase function, that's gonna change the phase a bit of the scattering. So you can play around with it, you know, just to get a more solid effect or whatever. For example, I'm gonna render this here at 8, and now I'm gonna render this at 0. It's really hard to compare if I'm not doing regions for you guys, but I'm just gonna keep this by default. I'm not gonna screw your heads around too much. So that's fine. So centimeters, you can increase that, and that's the scale of the scatter as well. So you can increase that to 5. So literally the light is gonna scatter further. 8, 50, and you can see how much it scatters it. So this is like a quick way of scaling the scattering, right? So let's just say you choose the skim milk, you change the scatter radius, and you change the IOR, and literally you can just start rendering it by just clicking scatter GI. So for example, now I'm going to change to none. So that's going to be, you know, a simpler calculation as well, and in a way it can be faster. So let me just let us make, honestly, I want to make you guys a couple of examples, right? So I'm gonna, because this area here is scattering so much, I want to render this area right here. So I'm gonna use none for now. Okay, I'm gonna use the production rendering. So I will render this with none, because I want to show people, you know, how it I want to show you guys how it obviously works, right? So save. So so we can delete all of those. So 15 seconds for the none. Simple. Come on. I hope I'm not gonna miss the region there. So that's the simple one. And I really want you to see, guys, how it's reacting, right? So probably I'm gonna guess that you will prefer using, you know, for marble effects or whatever, you will prefer using fast SSS, right? So I'm gonna save that, and then I'm gonna switch to the ray trace solid. By the way, I would recommend using fast SSS only for wax materials, mostly for wax materials and marble materials. For glass materials and plastics, refractive plastics, for example, I would recommend using this translucency there, just because it's, in my opinion, I think it's a bit more appropriate rather than using this one, because this material is purely constructed for skin shaders, for marbles, for wax, and you know, some liquids as well that has translucency and all of that kind of stuff. But for the refractive materials, this is going to be obviously a bit different, right? So there you go. You can see that none took 15 seconds, which was weird. Simple took actually the same. Maybe it's just a calculation or just loading the scene. 24 seconds. Now that's a difference, right? So simple, that's none, simple, and ray traced. And I'm switching, I hope I'm switching between those, because I'm not sure if we all right, so I can see that it's changing. All right, so that's none, simple. So you see that it's changing a bit, right? So simple and ray traced. So honestly, ray traced, I'm not seeing any difference in ray traced at this point, and this for this example. So I'm gonna change this to simple for now, and let's just try to change this to IPR mode. Bam, there you go. So for the refractive materials, obviously you will go something like, honestly, for the refractive materials, sorry, you will not create refractive materials with this very fast SSS, just because it's not gonna work really well. And it can look weird, right? So in a way you can work with it, but I would definitely, so for example, if you would be creating a glass chandelier, you will not be using this material, because it's not gonna give you the same effect as for example creating a translucency glass material with a V-ray translucency, which is inside of there, right? So you will want to sorry, let me just, it's a bit lagging. There we go. So I'm just gonna stop this for now. So you want to for glass materials that are translucency, like chandeliers and all of that kind of stuff, you want to try to use V-Ray V-Ray material with translucency, right? And I would recommend using a hybrid model, and I showed that in my glass video there. But I would recommend using this V-Ray Fast SSS for marble as well. So you can use marble with that one as well. I just showed you how to do that and how everything is working there. It's a bit complicated, but you have to play around with it a bit and you should be good to go. Now, working with more advanced marble materials or wax materials or whatever in general, you would want to switch to Fast SSS because it does render quite well these kind of effects, right? So sorry, let me just remove all. By the way, no, I don't want to remove this. Sorry guys, it's a bit lagging. So where is it? There you go. So I want to add this to scatter, sorry, this guy. Try to experiment with that. So I want to create another example here. And I want to put that object there. And I want to show you guys, so that's milk. That's milk hole. There you go, you're getting a different effect here as well. So as you can see, it's a lot more different, right? It's a lot more matte looking, but at the same time it is scattering. So obviously you can see that it's using ray trace refractive. Because it is, milk, it's kind of refractive, but well, you will not see anything through it, but it is kind of refractive. So that's why the preset is changing to ray trace refractives. Now, milk skimmed, it's also changing this to ray trace refractive, but we just used simple and it was working perfectly fine, right? So let's just try to change skimmed brown. Oh, sorry, we already did that. So marble white. So you can use marble white preset here as well, but obviously we just saw that working with skim milk preset gives us really nice effect. So I'm pretty sure if we would try to I don't want to use ray traced refractive, I want to try to use simple. So if we're gonna switch to SSS color there, diffuse color amount there, and sorry, that's the wrong one. I'm trying to replicate the same thing. There we go. So now straight up, it does look okay. It does look kind of similar to that. So I'm gonna, so 1.5 IOR there. I want to switch to the same one, so 1.6. So we're really close, right? So 1.6. So as you can see here, this preset works perfectly fine as well. If we're gonna switch this to skim milk, it does work really well as well, right? And the marble. So basically we just obviously can desaturate these colors and we're gonna get actually the same result. So you can use these presets and manipulate with these settings as much as possible. I don't want to go, further. I just want to show you maybe a couple more different approaches that you can use. So so marble white, whatever, ketchup. Try to apply that. So that's ketchup. It looks like yeah, it might look like ketchup, not sure, but it is working quite well. You have these so that's a cream preset. And I mean, you can see that it is working really well, right? I mean, you have presets, which is for beginners is going to be a lot easier to understand. So potato, I mean, whatever. I have quite a lot of presets. Water, clear. So now let me just object properties, renderable, bam. Now, as you can see here, water clear does work well as well. But like I said, I wouldn't create water with this fast SSS material just because it will be slow to render, right? So just keep that in mind. So obviously if you're changing to water or orange juice or something like that, you will want to change this to ray traced refractive, right? Because with solid, simple, or whatever, or none, it's not gonna work, right? So if you're changing to materials like juice, clear water, or even for skim milk, but honestly you're not gonna see through it, so that's just pointless basically, because you're introducing more rendering time. So for example, if you're switching to marble, I can even I can easily run a simple mode, right? And I'm gonna gain maybe a couple of minutes or a couple of hours maybe in rendering time, rather than just put this to ray trace solid, for example, right? So you're not gonna see a massive difference in changing ray trace solid to simple, but you will see the time difference in rendering time, right? So so you have water clear, you have orange juice, there we go. So I would play around with this color as well, obviously, but it is what it is, right? You have a nice preset, and then you can just play around with the scale, with the scatter radius as well, right? So really just try to manipulate with this as much as possible. And by the way, I forgot to do this refractive, there we go. So obviously you want refraction there, and etc, etc, etc. So you can see that playing around with fast SSS is quite fun. So please do play around with it and try to wrap your head around what setting. Honestly, when you look at it, it looks quite complicated in the beginning, but when you start playing around with these settings a bit, you will start seeing obviously different effects and whatnot, right? So just don't be afraid to experiment with your materials, because that's the only way you're gonna see that's the only way you're gonna learn how to work with your materials, right? Obviously, if you don't have a basic structure of where to go and what to choose and where to use this kind of material and how to create it from scratch or something like that, obviously it's going to be harder for you to experiment because you don't even know where to start. So for example, I remember my first learning days that I did open the material library and I had no clue where to start, how even the for example reflective materials are working, how glass is working, how wood metals are working, etc, etc, etc. So in the long run, when I learned from the internet or experimenting by myself, in the long run I obviously started to develop this understanding of how these materials should work in general. So but first, as I say, you just need that starting point, you just need that key, right? So I'm trying to give you guys those keys from those doors, but you are gonna have to unlock them yourself and walk through them by yourself, right? So you will have to experiment with your materials yourself, but I'm giving you the starting point. Where should you start using? For example, I just showed you 3 different options and how to create a stone slash marble materials, and you will not create a granite material with fast SSS. That's just weird, right? Never do that, please, unless you're creating something really specific. And you will not render a tile with fast SSS. That's just wrong basically. When you're starting to experiment with some, waxes or some liquids, some translucent liquids, or maybe some, I don't know, some really, really unique glass, maybe, because, this can get some glass refraction previews as well. But you can get translucency glass from this as well. But I don't really would recommend playing around with glass with this material. But I'm not saying you cannot. You can. There is a way to do that. But mostly I would use this for wax, for marble materials, for skin shader maybe. By the way, this is a new skin shader for V-Ray, as I remember, and that's about it. I'm trying to obviously tell you guys how to make this as easier as possible for you guys just to jump on it and work on it. So object properties, renderable, bam. All right, so I think I'm gonna end at this point because this video took, I think, way too long already. But I hope that you will, start understanding how to create these simple materials actually. So you can, like I said, you can create really simple materials in a really fast way. They're gonna be really fast to render and they're gonna look really, really good, right? But if you want to take it to a further step, you have to, obviously you have options, right? Using translucency, using dirt maps, using blend materials with 5 different materials, scratches, whatever. But like I said, the more stuff you plug into that V-Ray material, the more stuff you're applying to your scene, the longer it's going to take to render. And just keep that in mind. Don't I had some people coming to companies as well. Obviously I was working companies as well. I still am, but I had people, some ignorant people basically coming in and they're applying some really heavy load materials on their scenes, and then displacement maps in 3D and all of that kind of stuff. Basically people are not understanding how to work in a company. This is not about you. This is not about you as an artist. This is about business, and make it, just basically put that project out as fast as possible and in a, good looking way as possible. So the project has to look good. Obviously it's not going to look like a competition project, right? You're never going to have time on that unless you're working in some Neverland company, right? Which is quite a rare thing. I call it a white unicorn companies because they don't really exist, right? And those clients as well, they don't really exist. Sometimes they do, yeah, but it really depends from the budget as well. But anyways, what I'm trying to say, don't use your ego just to come into the company, for example, and do whatever you want to do there, create really complex textures, send the render for 7-10 hours, 12 hours or so, and just hang up the rendering farm, and everyone is going to be pissed and no one is going to basically like how you work. So you have to know how to start optimizing your renders, your materials, your lighting, your everything. And you can do that with V-Ray, right? Because with V-Ray you have a lot of control. V-Ray is like a hybrid, right? You can it can become a biased or unbiased render engine, right? You have brute force, you have light cache, you have a radiance map as well. I'm rendering this with brute force now because I'm rendering just one object. And if I'm not in a rush, I will render my projects in brute force light cache, but I will be creating a course in V-Ray rendering settings only. So please take a look for that. But like I said, V-Ray is really adaptive, and if you will learn how to be adaptive with V-Ray, it's just gonna be a blast to work. And V-Ray is obviously it's improving itself every day, and hopefully it's gonna become better and better, right? So yeah, guys, if you have some questions or something like that, please leave a comment. I'm always looking for comments. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe you don't like something. Maybe I can improve something on my courses or something like that. So please leave a comment. It's gonna help me a lot. And please don't forget to like and subscribe because it's gonna help me a lot. And don't forget to share because I hope that I can help as much people as possible in understanding a bit more about V-Ray and how to take your projects from there, right? So thank you very much again, guys, for watching my video, and see you in my next video, guys. Take care.